Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. In this episode, I'm going to go ahead and start off by turning into a Goron because we need to be a Goron. Well, actually, I'm not even sure if we need to be a Goron because Tattle says there's something in the middle of that blizzard and can we see it or not. I showed this in the last episode, but just in case, Big Goron, which is I'm assuming that's who that is up there. So we need to play the Goron's lullaby to lull him to sleep. Like I said, I'm not sure if you have to be a Goron to do this or not, or if you can do this as Link, but even if you can be Link, I've never tried that, I would still rather be a Goron because it just kind of fits in with the lore a little bit better. Now, being a Goron, in any case, will make getting up to the top of Snowhead Temple a little bit easier. Oh, wait. Are you kidding me? If that is a precursor of things to come, if that is a predictor of things to come, I'm really not feeling good about this episode. I kind of careened off the edge right at the very beginning. I almost did it right there as well. Anyway, what I was going to say was, if you're a Goron, you can get to the top of this and get into Snowhead a little bit easier. And running into these big snowballs on the ground, usually, I think I discussed this in the last episode as well, those will usually drop magic bottles so you can get up here without having to stop. And it looks like, well, I can't believe I actually got up here I was going to say on the first try, but not technically the first try because I did fail that one time. But here we are inside Snowhead Temple, the second temple in the game. And the first thing that we're going to need to do is smash these stalactites or stalagmites. I don't know the difference. And Tattle says it's going to take a more than average strength person to move that. And by the way, before I move that, I want to examine these white bows. She doesn't really have any information on them other than just calm down and attack them. These are kind of the analogs, or I don't know why I keep using that word, because even though it does make sense in some cases, it doesn't really make sense in this case. But white bows are kind of the counterparts, I guess you could say, to the dark bows or whatever in Woodfall Temple. Now, here we are in the first real challenge room, I guess you could say, of the temple, and these snowballs right here will almost always, actually always have magic, which we are going to need. And Tattle says slippery places like this, basically what she's trying to say is where there is snow on the floor like this, you can kind of rev up your tires a little bit and roll in place and gain your momentum or whatever you need to sprout spikes, which we're going to need because that gives you a speed boost to get over that gap. Now, before we go into that room right there, I'm going to go ahead and equip my arrows, and of course I'm going to need to equip my Great Fairy Mask as well because there are two Stray Fairies in this room. The first one is in a bubble under this little platform right here. By the way, I'm pretty sure I remember where all the Stray Fairies are in this temple, but this one was always the one where I had the most trouble with. Now there's one down here as well that you can only shoot from this one angle. That's why I waited to get over here to shoot this one. If you try and shoot it from any other angle than the one that I'm standing at, those walls are kind of like fake. Those basically, actually, it's kind of the opposite of a fake wall. Those areas that look like you could shoot through, you can actually not shoot through. Now, my pastime for this room right here is to pass that Stray Fairy right there and try and open the chest before I collect it. And I was actually successful on my first try. Not that I would ever, like, restart if I didn't get that to work. I just think it's kind of funny when you're standing there with the Great Fairy Mask, opening a treasure chest, and that thing is orbiting around you. But over here, we have a real bomb chew, and it has a pack of explosives. They're not really seen that often in the game. And to take them out, all you really need to do is slash them with your sword, or probably a better idea would be to shoot them with an arrow, because of course an arrow is a ranged attack, and you don't want to be near them when they explode. But they really do only do like a half-heart of damage or whatever, so it's not that big of a deal. But this room right here is kind of the catalyst for the entire rest of the temple. Everything pretty much is connected to this one room, and we're going to be doing a lot with this room before the end of the temple. Now, one thing I'm going to need to do before we go up is we need to go down. I need to go ahead and put on my Goron mask here, because if we fall off, like, over here somewhere, I thought I was actually going to land on the switch, but this switch right here will make a treasure chest appear over there, and that treasure chest will have a Stray Fairy, and I'm not really even sure why you have to press that switch. But before I get that, I want to go ahead and examine this. This is a red bubble. If you go in the defensive position, like the shield position, which is R for the Goron, which kind of like just makes them hunker down on the ground, I guess, they will bounce away and you don't really have to worry about them. But what I was going to say was, I'm not really sure why they put that switch down there in that fire when the chest that it makes appear was only like, 5 seconds away, not even 5 seconds away. My theory is that Gorons, of course, are invulnerable to lava, And that was kind of their way of getting you to understand that fact. And that's kind of like what I was talking about a couple episodes back. Actually, it was in the last episode, I believe. I really like the fact that these older games did that a lot more. Instead of, you know, somebody coming over the intercom or whatever and telling you that you're invulnerable to fire, they put a switch in the fire, and since you would probably be in the Goron form already because you had just made that gap jump in that second room or whatever in the temple, you would already be in the Goron form and you could walk into that switch and you would not be hurt by the lava. So it's kind of like teaching you the way of the game through playing the game. And I really like that about these older games. And I think that's why when people say that these older games, we only think they're good because of nostalgia, I think that's a little bit misguided. Anyway, I got off on a tangent there. Usually I don't do that in episodes. But anyway, we got a small key here and I pushed that block over into that little position over there because that made a stray fairy chest appear on the upper level, and we will be getting that before the end of the temple. But now, because we don't have fire arrows anymore, because I guess we lost all our stuff from the first game, actually, technically, I guess it never happened, we have to melt that ice right there with a, you know, the classic arrow through the torch technique. And another little pastime I always have is I almost always hit that wolf when I come through the room. I almost never kill it because it's not really worth it. But in this room, which also has a lot of wolfos in it, we are going to be getting the compass. So it's kind of probably, I'm trying to think where we got the map and the compass in Woodfall Temple. I'm pretty sure that we get the map and the compass within like the first, I'm not even sure how long I've been recording so far, but it's like 5 minutes. Into the temple, we got already both of the map and the compass. But anyway, we need to go ahead and throw a bomb up at that chest or crate up there. I'm actually not sure if that's how you're supposed to technically get it or not. That's how I always get it because the Majora's Mask Player's Guide, that is how they recommend you get it. Throw a bomb up there and put on the Great Fairy Mask, and it, of course, will come down to you. But speaking of bombs, of course, I had to put a bomb right next to that cracked wall, and that is how we get to the next room. Now, this room is a little bit weird, but if we look upwards, Tattle will go up there to that icicle and say, "It's an icicle." Wow, I didn't even notice. It's just like the one we saw outside. I think she might be referring to the one that we saw before we even went into the temple, or the mountains, I should say. So if that's what she's talking about, she was being a little bit, I guess, what's the opposite of descriptive? Non-descriptive? I'm not even sure. But anyway, if we line up this jump and just roll, we will be able to jump straight into the wall. And that is because, of course, that is not a real wall. And back here, we will be getting a stray fairy. Now, that is our 6th one, so it looks like we're almost like halfway done with the temple already. That's not entirely true, but we are actually, this temple is kind of a, if you know your way through the temple, it's one of those temples that you can get through in probably under half an hour or so, and I would really love to finish this temple in one episode. And if I can finish it in under half an hour, I'd love that. Now, we get the small key here, or we get a small key here, and we can go ahead and use that pretty much right away. Can't believe I got hit by that icicle dropping from the ceiling. And you know, I'd really love to be a little bit more descriptive with my stalactites and stalagmites, so I'm gonna have to look that up before I put this episode up. But anyway, I need to go ahead and equip the Lens of Truth. We just talked about that, but that is because there is a stray fairy up there in that hole in the wall or whatever, in the ceiling. I'm not sure why. Okay, I talked about before how, you know, the games, I guess, show you that, you know, how you're supposed to play the game or whatever. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to know that was up there, but in any case, we need to go ahead and equip the Goron mask, and that is because we are standing on a switch of sorts, and if we pound it, that will make the corresponding pedestal thing go up, and the opposite switch go up, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain. Basically, what we're in the middle of is a little bit of a puzzle, and probably, if I had to guess, it might be the hardest puzzle we've seen in the game so far. That's not really saying much, because this is a very easy puzzle. All we need to do at this point is come over here and smash the orange switch back down, and that will make that barrier covering the door go back down, and we can just jump up there. But the only thing we really need to do now is book it for this green switch, because we are now on a timer. Might as well go ahead and take out a few bows on the way, even though it's not entirely necessary to do that. I just like to do that because sometimes they'll hit you while you're trying to jump up there, and it turns into a big mess. But they do give you a pretty good amount of time to do that. But if we turn into a Goron here, we can do the patented, you know, spin your tires technique and jump over this gap right here, which is not really a, you know, a suspenseful moment. I've never actually fallen off there, I don't think. But right here, we have sort of a new mechanic. We have to roll along the wall on that snow, or we will fall off. Luckily, there is a way, there's a thing right there that will catch you if you do fall off, but it's really not that hard to stay on there as long as you kind of aim yourself in the right direction. Of course, that kind of applies to pretty much every little ramp or whatever in this dungeon, but that right there is a very easy place to fall off. And there's another one we're gonna have to do later. I'm actually gonna do it a way that you don't have to do that little mechanic right there again, but a lot of people do have trouble with that. But here we have a sort of mini boss. I want to go ahead and examine it real quick. This is a Wizrobe. We'll get our chance right when it starts to attack. Be on the lookout for it. This boss is a lot easier than I really think they intended it to be, because 2 Goron punches will put it in its second phase. And that second phase is really where it starts to get easiest, and that's where it was supposed to be the hardest, I think, because it'll do this little multiplication thing, or, you know, it kind of multiplies itself and creates copies of itself. But down there in the bottom right, if you have the map and the compass, or probably just the compass, it shows you exactly where the real one is. So any sort of challenge is kind of eradicated when you use the compass in the bottom right. What you're supposed to do, I think, is the other ones kind of look a little bit washed out, so you can kind of look at them and tell which one is real and which ones are not real. But like I said, the compass mechanic kind of makes it the easiest it can be. But here we're going to be getting the fire arrows, which we can set to C, and it will power up our arrows, and it will heat up things when they hit them. I think I mentioned in Woodfall Temple that the temple items that you get are really related to the arrows most often, and this is kind of more evidence for that. We get the fire arrows here, which the fire arrows, once you get those, a lot more of the dungeon gets opened up, which kind of makes a lot of sense, because we are in the ice dungeon, I guess you could say, or the snow dungeon. The first thing that we're going to do with the fire arrows is melt this block of ice immediately here to my right. Of course, the Goron cannot shoot arrows. I guess maybe his hands are too big for the bow. I'm not even entirely sure, but once we melt that block of ice, we can go up the stairs to the pretty much like the second to the top level, I guess you could say. This temple right here, or this ledge right here, I should say, is why I even wanted to come up here. And that is because if we aim the camera just right and jump off, you can see that there is one of those snow ledges or whatever, and there is a stray fairy in here. I think this stray fairy is the one that most people miss most often, and I'm not even sure if you're supposed to jump in there like that. That's how I've always done it, but there is a Deku flower that you can use to hover in there later on, but I always like to jump off into it, especially since you don't even take damage, because you can roll out of the damage, which I do believe is a lesson we learned in the Great Deku Tree in Ocarina of Time. But in this room, I just will go ahead and examine the enemies here. These are called freezers, or freezards. They do breathe out icy breath. The good thing about these guys is that a fire arrow will destroy them in one hit. Unfortunately, a regular arrow will only, like, clink off them. It doesn't actually do any damage. And I guess another fortunate thing is the fact that they drop magic bottles, which is exactly what you need to power up your fire arrows, which is exactly what you need to kill them, which is a great big old cycle, I guess, which means we're going to be able to take them out very easily. Now, taking out the freezards will spawn the stray fairy chest over here, which we, of course, need to get. And these pots right here will almost always drop magic as well. So I really like the fact that if you have to use magic or something like that, in most of the temple, or most of the rooms in this temple, they will probably have a magic chest spawner, a magic bottle spawner somewhere, and whether that be in a pot or something else. But the rest of the puzzle in this room is that we need to hit all of these torches with a fire arrow, which will unbar that door over there, which we're going to need to go through in just a second. But we also need to unfreeze that door over there, because that door is the door we're going to be going through after we do what we need to do in this door I'm about to go in the middle here. And what we do in the middle here is basically what we're going to do is make the tower in the middle. I don't mean to spoil anything, especially because it's about to happen. But once we stomp on the switch as a Goron, the tower in the middle there will extend up pretty much to the top of the temple. And when you do that, you can't go back through the middle anymore, which is why they put that other door over there, the one that you had to unfreeze, because you have to go through there to get to the rest of the dungeon. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is that I believe if you're in the air, when a freezer touches you with its icy breath or whatever, I'm almost entirely sure that you will freeze in the air and you will fall down there in that pit, which is kind of not that bad. Basically, it puts you down there on the level of where that switch was in the lava, where we had to hit that switch to make that fairy chest spawn or whatever. It's not that big of a deal if you do fall down there, but I would rather not do that if at all possible. But I need to come over here, back in this room. We did come in this room. I forgot to hit that wolf. Like I said, that's one of my pastimes. I forgot to do it that time. But in this room, now that we have fire arrows, we can melt the ice on the switch over here. And just like pretty much every other switch in the temple here, it will make a chest spawn up there. And that chest up there, guess what it has, just like every other chest in the temple, it seems like, it has a stray fairy in it. Now, you're supposed to use this block and move it in such a way that you get it right over near that ledge to jump over there and get that stray fairy. But I want to introduce you guys to a concept. I'm not even entirely sure what this trick is called, but if you stand next to a ledge and you have a bomb right next to you or behind you like that, it will push you towards the edge, and because you're going so fast from the bomb blast, you jump off the edge at a ridiculous speed, which is that trick I just used right there to get over there without having to move the block all the way over there, which means I can just move the block like so, and jump up here and get another stray fairy chest. For some reason, I really like that technique where you like blow yourself over the edge like that. It kind of manipulates the speed mechanics and the bomb physics, I guess, of the game. But here's that one room, the first room where we got a key in the game, and for some reason there are these magic pots or whatever that fly at you, just like in the Spirit Temple, or the Shadow Temple, I should say, in Ocarina of Time, and I don't remember any other place in the game where those show up. There probably are other places, but this is the only place that I can remember offhand. But that was our 11th stray fairy. And it's kind of weird that we had to wait so long to come back to get that, because that was the second stray fairy chest that we made spawn by moving that block into that kind of hidden switch area or whatever. Now, I tried to hit him right there. Unfortunately, I didn't get my, damage in there, but at least I remembered to do it that time. Now, we're not going to need to turn into a Goron in this room again, because now that I've introduced that bomb blast concept or whatever, I kind of want to do that. But first, there are a couple more freezers we need to take out. Guess what that spawns? Another treasure chest. This time, though, it's a gold treasure chest, which usually means in this game that there is a boss, or not a boss key, a regular key, I should say, inside of it, so we will be getting that, and that should be the final key, if I remember correctly, that we need to get in this dungeon. But now that like I said, I want to go ahead and do the bomb blast again. Sometimes, if you don't do it right, luckily I did there, sometimes if you don't do it right, it will just make you kind of do a little flop over the edge, which is really disappointing, because you don't obviously get all the way over to the other side, which is the whole point of doing that trick in the first place. Otherwise, I would just have to climb back up that ladder and probably do the Goron roll over that gap once again. But we're back in this room. I don't think I showed this off the first time we were here, but there is an ice switch up there. There's a freezer in the way, might as well go ahead and take him out, but if we shoot the switch up there, the little pedestal thing that we're standing on will rise up. That was actually kind of like right on cue. I didn't expect it to rise up so quickly. But there's a really cool thing I want to try in this room, and basically that's kind of like a shortcut just to get back up here. If I line this up just right and jump off the edge, I will get it right. I actually didn't think this was going to work, but the hard part about this is getting to the corners. That one went okay, and there we go. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what happened right there once we get down from here, but there is our 12th stray fairy. If we take out the Lens of Truth, we will see exactly what happened there. I always like to do that without the Lens of Truth. At least try it first of all, but you can see here that there is a staircase there, which is how you're supposed to get up there. That's actually how I did get up there. I just didn't use the Lens of Truth to line up my attack, or my, path up the staircase or whatever. Now, we're back in the middle room. Of course, now that the middle tower thing is up like that, we need to go ahead and smack out one of the blocks, and hopefully it doesn't freeze. Okay, good. Sometimes, I've actually had this happen more than one time while I was practicing for this episode. Sometimes if you hit one of those blocks like that as a Goron, we're actually not even out of the woods yet. There's like 3 more we gotta hit. Sometimes, I guess this is just a virtual console thing, it will just freeze. And it doesn't just freeze, it kind of like goes extremely haywire, makes all these really high-pitched sounds and stuff like that, so luckily it hasn't happened yet. We do have one more that we need to hit, and if it doesn't happen, I will be extremely glad, I guess, because it's a really miserable sound. And not only that, the past 20 minutes or whatever, however long this episode is so far, will have been pretty much a waste. Fortunately, that did not happen, but the reason you have to do it in that order, I think there's another order you can do it in, but what I like to do is hit one on the bottom, both of the ones on the top, and then the one on the bottom, because that way you can just come over here, climb on the top of that little pedestal thing in the middle, and walk over here to this locked door without having to roll on that side thing. But you can see over there in the top left that there is another one of those little ice shelf things, but what we need to do, of course, is use the Lens of Truth and the Great Fairy Mask and the bow to, I guess we could also use the Deku Bubble Blast if we really wanted to, but there's a stray fairy up there. You could probably do that one fairly easily without using the Lens of Truth, but I like to do that just because I don't want to waste any arrows if possible, even though we have a fairly big surplus of arrows. But here we have the Eno. It's persistent and it's susceptible to heat, which you might imagine because it looks like it's made out of snow. It's actually fairly susceptible to sword swings as well, so it's not probably entirely necessary to waste magic power using your fire arrows or anything. And one thing I've kind of wanted to mention, since I just realized it, actually I've been realizing it throughout the episode so far, every time I shoot an arrow, when it kind of returns from that shooting phase, and by the way, here we're fighting 2 Dynalthos or whatever. When you destroy them, they each will drop, I should say, a stray fairy. Luckily, we have the magic spin attack or whatever, the extended one, which makes it much easier. I cannot believe that he just interrupted my attack like that. But what I was going to say was, before that, it seems like whenever I shoot an arrow, when I get out of the shooting animation, like the Great Fairy face makes an appearance for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why that is, and it's kind of creepy. If I shoot another arrow, I can't think of a situation in which, actually right here, I might as well go ahead and shoot an arrow into these, whatever you want to call them, like, you know, snowballs or whatever. But if you see, it's kind of, I guess it's not going to happen on cue when I want it to happen. But sometimes when you shoot, it will show the Great Fairy Mask. You know what? Never mind. I guess, game, if you don't want me to show it, I won't show it. I guess it's your secret. Actually, what I'm probably going to do is take a screenshot after I'm done with this and put it on screen right there so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, because I am actually, now at this point, I'm not even sure if I am seeing exactly what I thought I was seeing. But here is the final little ramp thing in the game, I guess you could say. We're going to have to do that one more time, but now we're going to use the Deku Mask once more, and I love how it is the dawn of the final day. We're actually making pretty good time, considering I did all of that stuff in between Woodfall and Snowhead, like all those heart pieces and stuff like that. But you can see that I put on the Deku Mask over the Goron Mask. I actually like when you put the Goron Mask over the Deku Mask, which I'm going to do right here, because we need to use the Goron in the fight with the Wizrobe right through this door. And yes, that's right, we're going to be fighting yet another Wizrobe. I always thought it was really strange how they had two fights with the same exact enemy in the same dungeon. And spoiler alert, this isn't even the final time we're going to fight the Wizrobe in the game. So I don't know why they decided to use this boss over and over. It's not that hard. It's kind of, like I said before, more of a mini boss, I guess. But I did, like I said, still think it was kind of strange how they kept using this boss fight over and over. But that right there, it kind of reminded me, I'm not sure if I mentioned this or not, but the Goron has a punch, an uppercut, and then like a butt bump. Unfortunately, like taking enemies out with the butt bump is the best thing that you could possibly do in the game. Actually, that was pretty close right there. I uppercutted him to the ceiling, but that was the fourth hit, and the Wizrobe went down. All that really did, though, all that fight did right there, was open this door over here, but luckily, that is exactly what we need to make the boss key treasure chest available for us to get. And as you can see, it's like in this caged area. I always thought it was really strange how it seems like every boss key you get in the game is in what looks like a prison cell. In Woodfall, the boss key was in that one area where there were all those, you know, blue rupees or whatever, in what looked like sort of a prison cell. So I'm not sure what the significance of that is, but anyway, now that we have all of these stray fairies in the temple and we have the boss key, we are pretty much free to go to the final boss, and all we really need to do that, of course, is punch all the snowballs out of the way and roll for the final time over the final gap, like I said, in the Snowhead Temple. But on the other side of this gap right here, there is one thing I really wish I could show you. Might as well get rid of this last little stalactite as my final guess. Right there in that corner, there is something you can do called a recoil flip using Link and a bomb. And you can actually flip right through the door into the loading zone without getting the boss key. So what people do, in like an any percent speedrun or whatever, at this point you would already have the hook shot, so you can just go straight up the temple using the torches and stuff like that, and recoil flip through the door without actually having to get the boss key. Like I said, I'm not that good enough, or not good enough, to do that at this point. Maybe I'll practice that and show it in a bonus episode or something like that. But here, guys, we have Mass Mechanical Monster Goht, the boss of the Snowhead Temple, and maybe I think it might just be my favorite boss fight in the entire game, because we get to use the Goron and roll after it, and using the spikes, we can run into him and damage him, basically. I cannot believe that lightning bolt, or whatever you want to call it, did not damage me right there. But yeah, I don't know if you guys realize how awesome this boss fight is, and this is actually the return of the stutter step, I guess you could say. For longtime fans, or longtime viewers, may recognize the stutter step. I think that might be the first stutter step I've had in like 2 years at this point. But anyway, you can actually take out Goht using arrows. Of course, fire arrows would probably be the fastest way of doing it, but I like to do this much better because it's a little bit more entertaining to roll after him and damage him from his like underside and stuff like that, especially when he falls down and you can continue to hit him while he's down. I don't know why, it just feels awesome to be able to do that to a boss. Unfortunately, it's not going to be as fast as the Adawa boss fight because he has a lot more HP as far as I can tell, and he's constantly running away from you. But as you can see, speaking of HP, he's pretty much, it looks like there's lightning coming off of him right now. That means he's actually low. The more lightning there is, basically, the more low, or the lower he is on HP. Unfortunately, speaking of lightning, I should probably explain my tactics for this boss fight a little bit more, and believe me, this will relate back to lightning. I like to stay on the inside of this track right here. I don't know why, I guess I feel like it lets me dodge obstacles a little bit better, even though I got hit by a rock right there in the middle of me explaining my awesome tactics. But yeah, I like to stay on the inside of the track, because like I feel like it lets me dodge stuff a little bit better. Anyway, the lightning seems like it has a homing effect on it for some reason, and that is a little bit of a detriment when you're on the inside like that, because you can't dodge to the left like you would be able to if you were, say, in the middle of the track. But he's so low on HP, if I can finish him off with unfortunately, the butt bump was just not meant to be. If I could have finished off Goht with that butt bump like that, I don't know what I would have done. That would have been the coolest thing, I guess. Anyway, he fell down again. If I can maybe get a butt bump this time, that would be awesome. I guess it's a little bit better to punch him to death than just to roll into him to death. But either way, that was all there really was to Goht. He's really easy. The only thing is sometimes he can be a little bit annoying with his little lightning attacks and the rocks that he will drop, because they'll just make you stop rolling and you can't damage him at that point. But as far as how much damage he actually does to you, as you can see, all that stuff he did to me, I only took 1 heart of damage. So like I said, overall, he is not that bad. Of course, we're going to be able to pick up a heart container here, which is going to extend our maximum life energy by 1 heart. Might as well go ahead and butt bump him here. I don't know if I've shown the butt bump as a primary specimen, but that is the butt bump. We were able to finally do it to Goht, even though it wasn't actually to finish him off or anything. And here we get Goht's remains. Now, after defeating Goht, we've returned Spring to the Goron village area, and here's one of those frogs, by the way, that we could talk to if I decided to put on the Don Giro's mask, but I don't feel like doing that right now because I think we've earned a little bit of a break because we did so much in this one episode. We completed the Snowhead Temple, of course. We got all the stray fairies. By the way, I don't think, actually, now that I think of it, I don't think I ever showed where the stray fairy, the Great Fairy is for the Snowhead area, so I'll do that in the next episode. But as for this episode, guys, it is over. In the next episode, we're going to do a lot of kind of mopping up before we reset time. So I want to thank you guys for watching this episode of Let's Play The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and I hope to see you guys back for the next episode.